is the Silver and Black Today podcast, your source for Raiders news and information. Now, here's your hosts, swaggering boisterously.
Welcome back, Raider Nation. This is the Silver and Black Today podcast. I am Scott Branson, your host, founder of silverandblacktoday.com. If you haven't visited the website, please do. We're going to be talking about one of our greatest features, which is our senior NFL writer and columnist, Hayden Nadolny, who does his column Any Given Monday. And we're going to get to Hayden here in a second. But we've had breaking news tonight, which is fortuitous as we head into this live podcast tonight from Las Vegas, Nevada. Donald Penn is staying with the Raiders on a restructured contract. Now, we heard before that Penn was asked to take a pay cut, and now the veteran left tackle has agreed to terms on a small pay reduction. This is what Ian Rappaport reported. Also, the new deal actually increases Penn's guaranteed money in 2018, and that's per Michael Gelkin from the hometown Las Vegas Review-Journal here in town. And that is in exchange for team-friendly parameters. Now, Penn signed a $21 million extension last year, if you remember. He held out of camp, and they got that done. He's 35 years old and clearly an important part of this offensive line, despite the addition of the two draft picks in Colton Miller and Brandon Parker. But to get this news today is a big deal for many reasons. One is, I think, Penn, you want him there, right? He might be aging, but he is an anchor on that line, and when healthy, a big asset to the Raiders. So we're going to talk about that real quickly first as I bring in, all the way from Australia, Hayden Nadolny, our senior NFL writer and columnist. How you doing, Hayden?
I'm very well, thanks, Scott. How are you?
Doing very, very well. And obviously, Raider Nation doing well tonight, too, with the news of Donald Penn restructuring that contract to quote-unquote team-friendly parameters. Hayden, I mean, getting Penn in there, we saw Colton Miller in the preseason game on Friday. He obviously had the big hold against, or on the run. Marshawn Lynch broke for 60 yards for the touchdown that was called back. But overall, he did okay. But having a left tackle the caliber of Donald Penn with the experience, having your quarterback there in Derrick Carr on his blind side, this is a big deal for the Raiders to get this done.
Oh, certainly. Of course, it's a big deal. Yeah, ideally, you wouldn't want to have Colton Miller being a rookie left tackle going up the likes of all the AFC West pass rushers. So it's certainly a good deal for the Raiders. But I think the biggest takeaway from this is that they're pushing some guaranteed money into 2019. So right now, before Penn restructured his deal, they could have cut him and they would have been able to save $10.35 million off the books. But now they've put some guaranteed money into 2019, which possibly means that Penn could be still on the team next year as well. So what does that mean for Colton Miller's future? I'm certainly interested.
Well, and I saw some folks when this news broke just a little while ago, and again, it's only within really the last hour or so that this broke and was confirmed. And again, Michael Gelkin, great scoop from the Las Vegas Review-Journal to get that along with Ian Rappaport. But I'll tell you what, people started jumping to does this mean Miller goes to the right side? Absolutely not, in my view. I think Brandon Parker is going to be the guy over there eventually. And with Colton Miller, you need him to be your left tackle of the future. So what this allows, in my view, them to do is to have Donald Penn there as long as he's healthy, and it sounds like he's close to returning to practice. He was held out today again, but he was working on the side. So signs point to him coming back. And you don't want to rush Miller, in my view. There's no need to if you have Penn, number one, Hayden. And number two, the experience there for Miller to learn from Penn is a big deal. But I don't see him moving over. I think he's going to stay at left, and he's going to be the reserve there.
I think that's the most likely scenario, but then again, he's a first-round pick, and they want to get a return on their investment because first-round picks are only it's a 4-year contract with a 5th year, and after that 5 years, they're going to get paid handsomely if they're a good player. So you obviously want to get that production while they're cheap, especially when you've got some big contracts on the books like Derek Carr, Kelechi Osemele, Rodney Hudson, Gabe Jackson. Amari Cooper is going to have a big contract coming up. So these draft picks really need to pay dividends early on in their careers.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. At the same time, I think that this actually fits into what we've talked about over and over again, both here on the podcast and also on the CBS Sports Radio show, which you can hear on 1140 a.m. here in Las Vegas and streaming on radio.com. And that is the culture of competition, right? John Gruden, because Penn has restructured his contract to, in essence, help the team out, he clearly wants to stay with the Raiders, number one. Number two, it gives them some room, hopefully, as well, to work on some other things that they have in the works, including Khalil Mack. But at the same time, it doesn't mean he's got the starting job, right? I mean, if Colton Miller comes out and competes for that job in the rest of this camp and during the preseason, then he could start. Who knows? But if he does, he's going to have to beat out Penn.
Oh, of course. The odds are, though, that Donald Penn will be the starting left tackle once he gets healthy. And he still has to get healthy. He's not there yet, but he's getting closer. You'd hope that Penn will be getting extensive amount of times in the game 3 against the Packers next week, because that's when all the starters generally play a little bit over one half. And you'd like to see Penn get a little bit of chemistry with the line before then. Yeah, certainly. And
but good news, clearly Raider fans would like to hear that Khalil Mack has been signed, and there are grumblings out of Oakland and Napa, the camp there, that hopefully things are progressing. Very, very little information coming out, but what we are hearing a little bit is that they might have made some progress. We'll wait and see. Okay, Hayden. Well, that's the big news to start the show. But we're going to jump back into what we talk about every Monday, and of course that is your column, Any Given Monday, which you can find on silverandblacktoday.com. Hayden, so you in your column this week. And again, we don't give it all away because we want folks to go read it. But I will tell you, you start off with, and you give a lot of time to the game on Friday, and particularly one player, and that was Connor Cook and what he did in that game. What did you see from Connor Cook that made you feel that maybe he's taken that step that everyone thought he might have taken before this coaching staff got a hold of him?
He simply just showed a poise in the pocket that hadn't been seen during his entire Raider career. So I'm going to highlight 2 plays for you. So there was one time where the pass rush sort of broke down the pocket and he had to scramble out to the right. He looked off to the left, got out to the right, threw a lovely deep ball down the right sideline to tight end Paul Butler for the catch. It was a perfect throw. It was a perfect read. He couldn't have done it any better. And then a few plays later, when it's goal to go in the red zone, again, there's another scramble drill. He rolls to his left. The wide receiver, Ryan Switzer, and Connor Cook, they're on the same page, and he throws across his body, which, okay, it's not ideal, but it was a perfect throw. Only the receiver could catch it, and Switzer caught the touchdown. Those 2 plays there aren't what you would expect from a young developing quarterback. Now, that being said, there are a lot of instances in practices in which Cook has looked pretty awful. He's looked pretty bad. But when it's come to the game so far, he looked pretty darn good on the weekend. So I'm excited to see his development over the preseason, because they need certainty behind Derek Carr, that's for sure.
Well, and you talked about him not looking as great in practice, and today again he took a little bit of a step backwards, if you want to call it that, and threw several picks in practice today, per reports from Napa. But again, I agree with you there too, especially the poise. I felt like there were a few times when you could see some errant throws and whatnot, where perhaps the offense, that whole system and the playbook and all that, which is what training camp and the preseason is for, right? It's to learn, to get ready for, especially when you have this wholesale changeover in coaching staff and everything else. But I was impressed too by that, not only the poise in the pocket, but his demeanor. He just looked, in my view, very confident and didn't look rattled at all, where, you could look at somebody like E.J. Manuel, who's got much more experience, who came in after Cook and fumbled and lost a snap.
Oh, exactly. There was an air of confidence in Cook on Friday night. So there was just something about his confidence. He looked really calm. In the huddle, he looked completely composed. When he got to the line of scrimmage, he had plenty of time to read the defense pre-snap. He made a few reads at the line, which shows that he's seeing things at the line. He's making the right adjustments. He's got confidence right now when it comes to being on the field, and that's all you can want in a backup quarterback, because you never know when they're going to need to come into the game.
That's true, but I would say too, Hayden, and let me just take maybe a little bit of the other side here from what you wrote about Connor Cook, and that is, it is preseason, right? It's hard to look at a player in one game. We have to react to it, which is exactly what you did, and nothing wrong with it. But at the same time, just like Chris Warren III, who looked fantastic as well, it's one game, so we have to see them string it together and see how he comes out now against the Rams, whose second unit that he'll play against, or first unit mix, depending on how many folks they play on Saturday. He's going to get a much more, I think, stout defense to play against, and we'll see there. But it's, we joked about it today a little bit, and that was the fact that in the preseason, the backup quarterback is always a story, because that's usually when they are a story, hopefully, because you don't want that to come. But you're right. You need to be a successful team to win, to go get a championship, win a Super Bowl. You have to have depth. And so this is a big deal, because John Gruden, going into the season, wants to know that, God forbid, something happens to Derek Carr, there's somebody there competent and performing well enough to come in and fill the time.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. It's just one game, and the reality is he needs to be consistent. And if he's not consistent, then he's not going to make it in the NFL. So let's see how he goes over the coming weeks, and then we'll have a much better evaluation of where Connor Cook is going forward.
That's right. Now, every column, too, you take a look at veterans and rookies as well. And one of the rookies you highlighted here, we talked about, too, on the radio show yesterday, and that was P.J. Hall. What did you see from P.J. yesterday that maybe surprised you on where he is in his development?
Just the way that he plays leverage in the pass rush game. So he gets so low because he's got such a low center of gravity to begin with, that he's able to get low, get his pad level down, and that enables him to really push the pocket deep. And the first snap, it was textbook. Fidel Brown on the end got a really nice push on the edge, and that forced the quarterback to step up, and P.J. Hall was right there for the sack. It was really textbook. And if you also look at Hall, when he didn't get to the quarterback and wasn't able to get a pass rush going, he was able to get his hands up. For such a little guy, he's blocked something ridiculous like 14 kicks in college. So the guy knows how to time it and to get his hands up on balls, and he broke up a pass. So that's another really key thing about Hall. And another thing that people didn't really take much notice of, he almost blocked a kick in the, I think it was the second quarter. He went extremely close to blocking the kick. He's got so much athleticism for such a big guy. I really won't be surprised if he blocks one or two kicks this season. Wow,
that's a good one. Yeah, his speed, and I think we get caught up in, and if you remember right at draft time, because of his stature, and I mean his height, because you're right, that center of gravity is low. He is a really thick, big guy. But I think too often we get caught up in looking at the height, when a guy like P.J. Hall can get off the line very quickly, use that athleticism, as you mentioned, to get inside and make things happen. So it's very exciting. Now, you mentioned some other rookies, which folks can go ahead and read any Given Monday over on Silver and Black Today as well. We'll look at one veteran you also mentioned in your list of veterans as well. And this was a guy, too, that I picked up on as well at at our watch party this past Friday, too, with a bunch of Raider fans, and that was the play of Markel Lee.
He surprised me. He played really well. He looked, and I've watched the tape again. I watched it a couple times over the last few days, and every time I watched it, he seemed to show up a little bit more and more. And everyone that I've spoken to who have been at training camp, they have raved about Lee so far. So he's getting all the first-team snaps in the base package, a middle linebacker, and they're even now starting to put him out in the nickel and just to test his waters in the passing game. And so far, he has looked really, really solid. He had something like 8 snaps against the run, and he had 4 run stops. So he was really hitting the hole hard. He gets downhill very quickly. He makes one read and bam, he's gone. So it's really encouraging in that regard. The only thing I have concerns about is whether he's going to be able to hold up in space in the passing game, because he doesn't have fluid hips, but that's going to be a matter of Paul Gunther putting him in the right position to make sure he doesn't get exposed like that. And unlike last year, we have a competent defensive coordinator who should be able to do that.
Yeah, and we have a question in our mailbag here from one of our listeners, which we'll get to in a minute, and it's about that coaching staff. Now, one of my favorite features in your column is what you call 3rd and 7, where you make 3 predictions and then you give us 7 opinions on various subjects. One of your predictions, I'll tell you what, to me, I hope you're wrong, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But you have your first prediction is about Markel Lee, and if he continues to play as well as you just talked about him doing, especially in the passing game, you say Derrick Johnson will be cut. Now, I thought I was one of the only people that was really excited about Derrick Johnson becoming a member of this team, primarily not only because of his play, but also because of his leadership. Tell us why you think if Lee continues to develop and play as well as he did, why would Derrick Johnson be gone?
Well, he was there to be a mentor early on, and he was there to be a transition player. And if Markel Lee's already surpassed him in that regard, well, there's not going to be much point in keeping him. And when you've got a few players that maybe haven't turned up to camp and you need a little bit of extra cap space, any little $1 million or $2 million that they can add to potentially a contract now is something that they don't have to worry about down the line. So if Derrick Johnson isn't going to be an asset on the field, I don't see why there would be much of a reason to keep him.
Oh, very good point. Okay, well, we'll see what happens, right? That's why they play him, as they say. Now, one of the points that you talk about and sharing your thoughts with us on general subjects around the Raiders was about Daryl Worley's likely suspension, and if he is suspended, how it would hurt the Raiders. Talk about that depth, because that defensive backfield to me looked really good. You can't get too excited, of course, but I thought they looked good because they really did, for once, play the ball, look back towards the ball, instead of just seemingly running around lost like they did last year. Why is Worley's suspension, or possible suspension, most likely suspension, why could that hurt the Raiders significantly?
It's only going to hurt the Raiders significantly if Garyon Conley gets injured or remains sidelined. So at the time I wrote the article, Conley was still sidelined with the hip strain. He's returned to practice today, which is a great sign. And we know that if Conley's healthy, he's going to be the starter opposite Rashaan Melvin. In any case where one of those two guys goes down, the guy on the outside that's going to be the next man up is going to be Worley. So if Worley's out, that's meaning they're going to have to go to their number 4 guy. I don't think you're going to be putting Leon Hall on the outside in that situation. It's probably going to be someone like either Sharice Wright, Dexter McDonald, Antonio Hamilton, or the rookie Nick Nelson. It's going to be one of those guys. So you don't really want to throw any of those guys into the fire on the outside if Conley and Worley are both down. So you'd hope that Worley's only out for a couple games at the most with his suspension. But, I mean, the NFL, they change the boundaries and the rules every day. So it's really going to be difficult to see or to place any expectation as to what the suspension is. I mean, look at what happened with Deflategate. It took like 18 months for there to be a 4-game suspension, and no one really still knows what happened. So anything really regarding Worley's suspension is possible. At the moment, my prediction is maybe about 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes, and it'll be interesting. But you're right, the NFL is not consistent with its punishment that it doles out for folks that violate league rules. So we'll have to see. Now, hey, let me ask you this. Derek Carr, you made some comments about Derek Carr and how he looks. And I want to get your comments and let people know a little bit of your opinion on that, because for me, going into the season, I thought one of the most overrated and just off-base opinions, especially by national folks. I don't think it was so much folks in Raider Nation or even media that covers the Raiders very closely on a daily basis, but national folks really played up early this thought that John Gruden, with his fiery attitude and propensity to drop F-bombs, could not get along and would be very difficult. It would be a difficult relationship between him And Derek Carr heavily religious and, just a clean guy overall, really likes to be a family-oriented guy. That has not borne out to be true. And in fact, you say you see something in Derek Carr you've never seen before.
He's got more of an edge. He's got more of a little bit of a sharper edge than he has recently. I mean, you listen to him in the interviews and there's more of a, I don't want to say there's more of a focus because that implies that he was less focused than last season, but there's certainly a sense of urgency, I guess you could put it. And he's certainly paying attention to a lot of the little details, and he's getting pushed. It's obvious that he's getting pushed every single practice, every single meeting, even in the weight room, he's getting pushed there. So Derek Carr's doing all the right things right now, and there's just a sense of confidence in him that even though he's been extremely confident in the past, there's something new about this version of Derek Carr in 2018 that I think Raider fans should be excited about.
Well, and not to in any way make Derek Carr sound like a child, because he's a grown man. Don't get me wrong. But being a father, I can tell you that it's been my experience, and I think this is, I'll get to why it matters in a second, but to me, with my kids, you have to give them structure, you have to give them discipline. If you just let them run around and do what they want and kind of, be wishy-washy in how you address things with them or try to motivate them, then they tend to react to that environment, the environment that you've created. And so when you say, yeah, Derek Carr, it wasn't that he had a lack of focus last year, but under the previous coaching staff, it was a different environment, a different culture where things were handled differently. They weren't as direct. They were much softer, if you will. Whereas with John Gruden, you know where you're at. He's talking to you, and Derek Carr has said this so many times, Hayden, that listen, I talk to Coach Gruden multiple times a day. We're talking all the time. Where he's ripping into me. He's challenging. He's calling me and saying, "Okay, here's your play. What's the read?" So that challenge means, when you have a player of the caliber of Derek Carr, who I think is at least a top 10 quarterback in the league, he wants to be challenged because he has that competitive spirit, the desire to be the best. And if you don't challenge him got then they get lulled into just doing what they do. And to me, that makes all the difference in the world. And this is where I think it's got to translate to the field. Yes. But to me, John Gruden has already won a massive battle, and that is to get Derek Carr in a position where he's motivated and wants to do the best he can.
Exactly. Under the last regime, under Del Rio and Todd Downing as the offensive coordinator, close enough was good enough. So when Derek Carr would make a mental error, in the meetings they'd get him up on get the tape up on the screen, and Downing would point it out. Okay, Derek, you've made this error. You've thrown it out to the wrong shoulder. I know you're not going to do it next time. We've identified it. Okay, let's move on. The problem is they didn't really find any ways of rectifying it. So you'd see the same mistakes pop up over and over again. And it wouldn't just be from Derek. It would be from Seth Roberts, Amari Cooper, Crabtree, Jared Cook, the line, the running backs. You'd see it. Everyone were making little mistakes. And those mistakes were being overlooked because they were so small and deemed almost as insignificant in a way because they were almost convinced in a way that these mistakes wouldn't happen again. And it wasn't the same guy making 5 mistakes in consecutive weeks. What it was one player would make one mistake one week and then it would translate to the next week with another player. But under Gruden, you're not going to see that because he gets those mistakes rectified immediately. He makes sure that everyone else takes notice that, hey, I can't make that mistake either. Everyone's taking notice in the meeting rooms. Everyone is on point when it comes to the walkthroughs. Everyone knows where they stand in the hierarchy and making sure that everyone is bought into the culture. And that's something that no Raider team has had in a very long time.
Right. And to me, it comes back to Gruden's demanding of accountability. It doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that when Derek Carr makes a mistake or something happens on the offense, that it's always all his fault. I felt last year he was a stand-up guy. He'd get up there and say, hey, that's on me, that's on me. That's what a good leader does. I got no problem with that. But I felt that the coaching staff would often hang him out to dry last year with that sort of stuff. So it'll be interesting. And I agree with your assessment of where he's at. Now, we're going to talk about the coaching staff here here in the few minutes that we have left with you. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the sponsors that we rely on for, and you guys benefit from because you get to hear this podcast and also read our website. And that is these sponsors who support the Silver and Black today. They support Raider Nation and football. And first, we'll tell you about, you may know the Southern Nevada Laborers are, if you read a lot about the team moving to Las Vegas. The Local 872 is building the new home of the Raiders, the Las Vegas Stadium. But the Southern Nevada Laborers are also making a brighter future possible for men and women all over the valley. The Southern Nevada Laborers will give you the skills you need to become a part of a workforce that's strong and committed. Call the Southern Nevada Laborers at 702-452-9210. Get the training you need for a brighter future. The Southern Nevada Laborers, that's 702-452-9210. Local 872 is a proud sponsor of the Silver and Black today. Also, listen, football season is here, and we all like to have a little action on the games. That's where our friends at US Bookmaking come in. Why would you use another mobile gaming provider? US Bookmaking gives you the best wagering odds. Start at $1.08. That's right, 15% odds to begin with before you even bet. Best parlay payouts, for example, 14 parlays usually pay out about 11-1 around most sports books in Las Vegas and around the world, but not at USB, where you'll get 12.7-1 odds that you just can't beat. Play legal sports betting in all those jurisdictions which allow it. It works on the iPhone, iPad, Android tablet. Download the app here real soon in the App Store or at usbookmaking.com. Well, we're back here, the Silver and Black Today podcast, live with Hayden Nadolny, our senior NFL writer and columnist. Make sure you go read his popular weekly column, Any Given Monday, which you can find at silverandblacktoday.com. Hayden, we had a couple questions come in via various channels from the podcast, including from one of our most loyal supporters, and that is Corey Sanford. Corey wanted to ask us about what we thought of the coaching staff this year compared to previous years, and for him, the biggest takeaway and the biggest change that he feels that he has seen was what I mentioned earlier about the defensive back, and that, of course, also was how Derrick Ansley is doing. Hayden, talk about this coaching staff. You talked just previous to the sponsor messages that you've seen a different look from these coaches versus what Del Rio did and his staff did. But what else are you seeing, per Corey's question, around why this staff is so much different than anything we've seen in Oakland in a lot of years?
It's fundamental accountability. So they've never had a head coach, a leader that's pushing the players as hard as John Gruden is. And that really stems, Gruden is pushing everyone from the top down. So he's pushing his coaches who are then passing that message on to the players. And these coaches have more experience and have had more success over their careers than a number of the past Raider coaching staffs. It's really not that comparable. And right now, if you look at what the content, the makeup of the Raiders staff, especially on defense, it's better than what they've had in close to a decade, maybe even a bit longer.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. Now, speaking of, and this is a guy that you've been a big fan of, and we hope to have you interview really soon, and that is Derrick Ansley. What have you seen so far? I mean, we've seen one game, but we've also been reading a lot and seeing some things come out of camp about the defensive backs, and they got a lot. I mean, listen, there was nowhere to go but up. At the same time, though, the rise of this defensive backfield and what's happening with what they've had so far and where they're going from a development standpoint, I think has surprised many. Talk about Derrick Ansley and what you saw in this one preseason game that gives you a lot of hope.
Well, how many blown coverages down deep did you see?
Exactly.
There were none.
Nope.
There were none. Whereas you look at last year, there would be at least two to three a game. I mean, even just simple plays, and it's not just Derrick Ansley, it's the entire defensive coaching staff. You look at the way that Del Rio and Ken Norton, they couldn't teach how to defend the bootleg to the tight end coming out into the flat. They just couldn't teach it properly. The Lions ran it once, and Tayo Whitehead stamped it out real quick on Friday night. So it's just a matter of making sure that these players, they know what to do if you put them in the right position. And there's a little bit, I think that what we're going to see is that we're not going to see an amazing defense this year, but we're going to see the fundamental signs that this defense is going to be able to develop into something special with the years down the road. I'm excited to see Khalil Mack in this defense, though. He's gonna be a game changer. Well,
and to your point too, I think this is where Raider Nation needs to temper itself a little bit and understand that it's a progression, right? There are fans out there who think, John Gruden's back and we've seen some good things thus far and this team's going to win 14 games. Not so. But I think a more realistic expectation, Hayden, and you touched on it just a second ago, which is you want to see progression. You want to see improvement. We all thought last year that we would see some improvement there despite some of the lack of talent. But we thought we'd see improvement because I think fans are patient when it comes to, okay, we're not there yet, but you can at least see them getting better. They're making the right reads. They're making the right plays. They're fundamentally sound. To me, that's the one thing I see with Ansley so far, Hayden, is the fundamentals of how these backs are playing is so much different and so much more refined than it was last year.
Yeah, to illustrate your point there, they're not panicking when the ball's coming their way. They're not getting grabby and all happy like that. And they're quite, I'd say almost calm when the ball's coming their way in terms of getting their hand in there and breaking up the pass or making sure that they stick the tackle so that they're not getting any big plays further with a run after catch. But really, what you want in a coaching staff is at the end of every Sunday or Monday or Thursday night, whenever the game is, you want to know as a fan that the reason you lost wasn't a case that your coaches didn't game plan properly or they didn't have the players in the right position for a certain amount of plays. You can live with a loss knowing that your team just simply didn't have the talent on the roster. Because you know that if they're giving their effort and they're fundamentally sound and they're put in a position to succeed, that long-term suggests that you're going to have success because the talent's always going to be able to be improved. Whereas the coaching, if you're not putting the players in the right position, it doesn't matter how good the players are. So under John Gruden, I think we're going to see a lot of games that are going to be very close, even when the talent discrepancy might be a little bit bigger than what the score should indicate. Yeah,
that's what I've said too. I really believe I'm optimistic for 2018. Don't get me wrong, but I really believe that you will see that with John Gruden's sophomore year and his return to the Raiders, meaning next season 2019, especially if they get Mac signed up and ready to go with his long-term deal and everyone stays healthy, I really think 19 you'll see that sort of next jump up where people are really going to be happy with where things are going. So there you go, Corey. We talked about that and we appreciate your question as well. Okay, hey, now we're going to move in the little time that we have left here. We're going to do some wild card thing. I'm going to throw some things at you and I want you to tell me true or false, okay? So here we go. Chris Warren III makes the 53-man roster.
Well, I'm going to say true.
And
I don't think they can stash him on the practice squad. I think someone will take him, so I can see him landing on the 53, even if he's just a healthy and active each week.
Interesting. Okay, so Obi Melifonwu will be cut within the next 2 weeks. True or false?
Ooh, 2 weeks. That would be... No, I'm going to say false. I think he gets cut in the final cut downs.
Okay, there you go.
Or they'll stash him on IR. It'll be one of the two.
Ah, okay. Now, who will Griff Whalen make the 53-man roster?
False.
Okay, so Griff Whalen, even though he's played tough out there, but Ryan Switzer will, correct?
Oh, 100%. Not even a question.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? I was talking to a friend of mine today who is actually a big Seattle Seahawks fan. God bless him. And he was talking about, I watched a little bit of the Raider game. I saw a couple of these smaller wide receivers make some nice plays, including the touchdown to Switzer. And he said, it looks like the Raiders are trying to become the Patriots. And if you remember, our own Chris Reed wrote a piece about that, about how we're trying to take a kind of a page out of the playbook of the Patriots. And this is where the argument that still people like Shannon Sharp and others make, that John Gruden's too disconnected from the game and this and that, where in reality, I believe the fact that he was on Monday Night Football for a decade and he went around to all these camps, I think he's taking the best of what he saw on what works today. And this is the same thing. Having these wide receivers, they're not going to be your down the field threat like an Amari Cooper or a Martavis Bryant, right, or even a Jordy Nelson. But what they are going to be is sure-handed. They can come in and be a possession receiver, and that's exactly what we're seeing with a Ryan Switzer and even a Griff Whalen.
Well, even John Gruden alluded to it back, I think it was at the Combine. He was saying that the Patriots are so diverse that they can beat you in different ways, depending on the personnel that they're matching up against each week. So Gruden definitely doesn't want to be pigeonholed into being just a running team or a West Coast throwing team or a deep threat vertical going down the field. He wants to be able to be multiple in every sense of the word. So I think you're going to be finding there are going to be games when Marshawn Lynch is going to be carrying the ball 20, 25 times a game. And then I really won't be surprised if Derek Carr is slinging it between 40 and 50 times in a game, just depending on what the packages are, because Gruden really wants to make sure that teams are going to find it difficult to game plan against the Raiders.
Right, and that running game being successful will do that, because I think that's a misnomer. People think that if you're throwing the ball 40 or 50 times a game that you're not running it successfully, and that's just not true. At the same time, we'll see how that all nets out. But I just think that John Gruden's been underestimated, and I think, frankly, he likes being underestimated because it gives him more of an element of surprise, because people are expecting the least and he's able to do things differently. Now, are you concerned at all with Martavis Bryant and the things we've been hearing out of camp about him?
No, not at all. Not at all. Not one bit. He's going to be fine. He's going to be ready for the season. Okay, he might be a little bit behind in terms of the playbook, but in the grand scheme of things, he's going to be ready to roll come week one, and that's what matters.
Yeah, and I think that's the same thing. A lot of people talking about, well, geez, if Khalil Mack's not in camp soon, how's he going to be ready? Listen, guys like this, I think when you're a top-tier player like that, and even in other sports, you talk in your column a lot and educate a lot of us on Australian rules football. Here, my first love was baseball, and with baseball, it's the same thing. In spring training, you have the slugger who's a big home run hitter, and oh boy, he had one home run the entire spring. Is he going to be able to do it? And they come out, and when the money's on the line and the game's on the line, guys like Martavis Bryant, I think, are going to be there. So, and of course, Hayden, they moved the game in London. You heard that today as well?
I did read that this morning. I was initially surprised when I read a few weeks ago that they were considering it as a possibility, but I don't really think it's going to make a whole lot of a difference. I mean, Tottenham and Wembley, the Wembley Stadium, they're not far from each other, so the travel arrangements aren't going to really change. So it's not going to be that much of a big deal.
No, and the opponent hasn't changed. So, and I'll tell you what though. There's with some of the folks who like to rumor monger and aren't necessarily always up to speed on the real information, and that is, the people talk about the stadium in Las Vegas not being done on time. Well, this stadium was not done on time, and I can guarantee you our sponsor, the Local 872, the men and women building that stadium, and the business manager over there, Tommy White, a good friend of the show, those guys would have gotten the stadium done. So, like you said, it doesn't really matter, but that was another piece of Raiders news today. So, Hayden, I want to, again, thank you, man, for joining us. Your day is just starting on the other side of the world, so we certainly appreciate it. I got one more question for you before we go, and that is, it's directly for you, too. It says, Hayden, how do you like to see the Raiders handle this week's game against the Rams as far as the starters' playing time against the Rams down there? Do you sit them the whole game, play one series, or do you play more?
I think you have to play about a quarter. Maybe depending on how the offense goes, you could. I mean, if you get a touchdown drive, the first drive of the game, and it's a long methodical drive, they get 10 plays in. Okay, you can probably pull them out, but you'd like to see them get a few first downs, get into a groove, have maybe more than one drive, and then you pull them going into the second quarter. At the most, you would play one drive into the second quarter with the starters. In terms of the defense, there's more rotation going on in the defense. So I think you'll see the starters for the first maybe 10 minutes of the game. And then the second quarter, I should say, you're going to see a lot of the backups with a few of the fringe starters. And then come the second half, it's just going to be the third stringers like it was last week.
Yeah, and that's good. We'll see. On the offensive side of the ball, I hope to see more of that, of the wide receiver core. We saw Nelson catch a short pass, and we saw Cooper and those guys out there a little bit, but I'd like to see them get more involved and see how they're progressing. Also, the running game, we didn't see Doug Martin very much, and when we did, it wasn't very good. But since I've been blowing that trumpet on him, hopefully he gets some more time there as well, and we start to see some of those guys gel together.
Yeah, no, exactly. But one thing that we should also take into consideration is that the Raiders are playing the Rams week 1 of the regular season.
Yes.
So there's not going to be anything fancy going on from either side. Potentially, it means that they're going to have to manage the players a little bit differently than a normal regular preseason game, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great point. Now, what do you see? What do you want to see from a positive perspective? What we saw last week, what do you want to see continue for the Raiders, both on offense and defense?
Establishment of the running game. So they were really able to get downhill. Even on the outside zone plays, they were able to move laterally quick, but they were also able to get downhill a lot quicker than they were getting on the outside zone last season. So that's something that I'm going to be really looking to make sure that we see that. Also, I want to just see the right tackle position. There's a lot of... I'm not confident in Ian Silverman at the moment, so let's see. David Sharp's been getting first-team reps today at practice at the right tackle position, and Brandon Parker's back training with the team. So there's a good possibility that there's going to be a big competition going there. So let's see how that goes as well.
And we'll let you go after this one. What big weakness did you see against the Lions on either side of the ball that you'd like to see significant progress on from week 1 to 2?
It would have to be the offensive tackles. You know, you just want to make sure that they're fundamentally sound. They're not getting pushed back. We want to see Colton Miller not doing his false step. He didn't do a false step on the weekend, but he was still doing a heel lift. So he's going to need to still clean that up. But he's getting better, and we just want to see continual improvement from those two positions. And I really would like to see Brandon Parker get on the field and get healthy. And if he can get some snaps in at right tackle, I think there's every chance. He's going to get every opportunity to be a starter come week 1. So he needs to get on the field and he needs to get multiple snaps down, because you just don't have enough time in practice these days.
That's right. And being a third-round pick, like you mentioned, a high-round pick, you want to see him get in there and at least start to produce enough where you feel comfortable going in and him competing for a starting role. Well, listen, this has been Hayden Nadolny, who is our senior NFL writer and columnist on Silver and Black today. Hayden, thanks, buddy, and we will talk to you next week.
No, thank you, Scott. I'll speak to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Hayden. Hayden Nadolny, all the way from Australia. Again, you can read his column any given Monday, which is found on silverandblacktoday.com, the website which started all of this. And, of course, this podcast, we're going to be doing probably more. We get some messages from folks who say, hey, how come you're not doing a podcast today, just after we finished 3 hours of radio broadcast and podcasting over the last 2 days? We appreciate the support. Again, we are so blessed to have an amazing group of folks, listeners, readers who always like to give us feedback, and we appreciate that, both good and sometimes when we fall down. You guys correct us, and we certainly appreciate that. It shows the power, the passion, and the knowledge in Raider Nation, which is absolutely fantastic. So we appreciate that. Some things coming up I want to remind you of. So our CBS Sports Radio show, as you guys, or most of you at least know, we have an over-the-air radio show here in Las Vegas, which is found on CBS Sports Radio, 11:40 a.m. That runs Sunday mornings from 8 to 10 a.m. So we will be your breakfast pregame show heading into the season. And even when the Raiders are on the road, we will actually be your pregame. We also have some more exciting news to share with you later at a later time on some of the things that are coming up that we'll be doing, including watch parties and other things here in Las Vegas as well. So make sure you do that. Now, coming up on the show this coming Sunday, yes, it's 6 days away, but it's never too soon to talk about Raiders on the radio. And we're going to have Vinny Bonsignore, who is now with The Athletic, formerly of the LA Daily News. He's covered the Rams. He covers the NFL. He's one of our NFL experts and insiders. He's going to join us on Sunday morning to review what happened the night before when the Raiders play the Rams. Since Vinny knows the Rams better than anybody, he'll share with us his comments, his takeaways for both the Raiders, the Rams, and share with us any other NFL news, including stuff on Khalil Mack. So we'll see what happens there. But he will join us on CBS Sports Radio, 11:40 a.m. If you're not in Las Vegas, no worries. Settle down. You can listen to us in a couple different ways. Number one, radio.com. If you don't have the app already, go download it. It is awesome. It not only can you stream our show live on Sundays, but also you can listen to sports radio stations from around the country. So when the Raiders are maybe going to a different city, if you want to troll some people in those cities, you can listen to their radio shows and call them as well. But download the radio.com app. If you're at home and you're on your laptop or your computer, your home computer, you can also do it radio.com as well. They stream it right there in your web browser as well. We also stream each show live on video. So you can actually come in and watch what we're up to and see what we're wearing for the day as well. And you can do that on a Facebook page. So our Facebook page, which is easy to find, just do Silver Black Today on Facebook and you'll find our page. Make sure you like the page so you get all the updates there. So we stream it live there. We also stream it live on YouTube. So if you're a YouTuber, you like to listen to the podcast there, you like to watch video there, it's there as well. And on Periscope, which... yeah, not many people will sit for 2 hours on Twitter and watch a video, but we're there as well. So if you're out grabbing donuts for the family or you're on your way to church or you're after church, whatever you may be doing on a Sunday, you can also watch us there as well. So make sure you check it out too, so you can come in and see what we're up to and see what we do during the breaks. Ooh. Interesting, huh? I just want to also thank again, too, another new sponsor that we have, the law offices of Michael A. Troiano. He's a proud supporter of all things Las Vegas, including its people, specializing in local legal representation for all criminal defense matters, ranging from minor misdemeanor offenses to the most serious of felonies. Attorney Michael Troiano provides clients with the legal strategy and professional representation needed in court. If you or someone you love find yourself in a legal situation and need tough defense on your side, the law offices of Michael A. Troiano can help. Call now for a free consultation. That's 702-843-5500. Again, that's Michael Troiano, Vegas Law, here at TroianoVegasLaw.com. We want to thank him. He is a new sponsor. Michael's a great guy. In fact, he is our in-house legal expert. So anytime we have legal issues... hopefully we don't have any with the Raiders this year, but if we do, Michael will come on, even NFL-wide stuff. Even though our show is 99.9% Raiders during the NFL season, things that are germane to the NFL and happening, we will also cover, and Michael is going to be our legal expert, so that'll be kind of cool. So we're excited about that. Well, we're going to wrap it up, friends, for a Monday night here in Raider Nation. This has been the Silver and Black Today podcast. We want to thank you for joining us live on Spreaker. And if you didn't make it live and you're listening to us on iTunes or Google Podcasts or Spotify, we want to thank you for doing that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button or download button if that's the way you prefer. But we certainly appreciate your support. Without all of you, we would not be here, and we always know that, and we never forget it. So may the autumn wind always be at your back, Raider Nation. Until next time, which should be pretty soon, so stay tuned on that one. We want to thank you for joining us. You have been listening to the Silver and Black Today podcast here on Spreaker. We'll talk to you at least on Sunday on CBS Sports Radio, 1140 a.m. Take care, everybody.